Imagine this, the highest stage of American politics, where every move is calculated, every blink magnified. And yet, right there, in front of the world, Chuck Schumer, the Senate veteran, the man who's seen it all, finally blinks, not because of a budget war, not because of a shutdown, but because of something far more unpredictable, a mayoral race in New York City. A young candidate named Zoran Mamdani has set off a chain reaction no one saw coming. His sudden rise hasn't just disrupted New York politics, it's shaken the entire Democratic hierarchy. Because if Mamdani wins, he won't just be the mayor of America's biggest city. He could redefine what the Democratic Party even stands for. Schumer knows it. Trump knows it. Both men, two political titans on opposite sides, suddenly find themselves locked in a much bigger game than a local election. And Trump? He's already moved his first piece. One statement, one sentence, and it's flipped the board upside down. So now the question isn't who becomes mayor. The question is, who's really pulling the strings of America's future from behind the curtain? Stick with me, because once you see how these pieces align, you'll understand Schumer didn't just blink. He walked right into a carefully set trap. Chuck Schumer, senator, strategist, survivor, has been playing politics longer than most Americans have even cared to. But right now, he's cornered. On one side, the traditional Democratic establishment, donors, governors, the centrists, all whispering that the party's drifting too far left, that it's losing touch with the working class it once claimed to represent. On the other side, an energized progressive movement, louder, younger, and unrelenting. To them, compromise is betrayal, moderation, weakness. This isn't just internal disagreement. It's an existential identity crisis for the Democratic Party. Here's what the headlines won't tell you. Behind closed doors, moderate Democrats are in full-blown panic. They're staring at collapsing polls in swing states, listening to voters who once supported them, but now feel alienated by radical slogans that sound more like revolution than reform. They see their rising stars choosing purity over practicality, performance over policy. And in the middle of that storm stands Schumer, trying to hold it all together. And that's when he folds. Not because he wants to, not because it's clever politics, but because he's afraid of losing control of his own caucus, afraid of being branded a traitor by the movement his own party created, afraid that silence might buy him time, when in truth it's only tightening the noose. For over a month now, Washington's been locked in a shutdown. Officially, it's about budgets and subsidies, but that's not the real story. The truth? It's about proving loyalty. Schumer and Jeffries are trying to show the far-left base that they're fighters, that they can resist, that they'll draw their line in the sand even when it makes no strategic sense, even when that line ends up hurting the very Americans they claim to represent. Because in today's Democratic Party, appearing weak terrifies them more than the cost of chaos itself. Think about that. These are seasoned politicians, men who have mastered Washington's power games for decades. Yet their choices aren't guided by logic or leadership anymore. They're ruled by fear. Fear disguised as conviction. That's not courage. That's desperation wearing a suit. And that fear, it didn't begin in D.C. It began in New York. Zoran Mamdani, a young state legislator, virtually unknown just a year ago, suddenly emerges as the progressive hope of New York. He's charismatic, he's radical, and his message resonates. He calls for government-run grocery stores, massive tax hikes on the wealthy, expanded rent control, sweeping social reforms, the kind of platform that electrifies crowds and terrifies Wall Street. His campaign looks unstoppable. Tens of thousands of volunteers, hundreds of thousands of doors knocked. A movement from the streets, they said. Except it wasn't. When investigative reporters began digging, the cracks appeared fast. Money trails, shared offices, repeated names, a pattern emerged. What was sold as grassroots began to look like something else entirely. Reports surfaced suggesting that over 40 million had flowed through a maze of tax-exempt organizations, groups that claimed to be independent, but were quietly linked by the same executives, the same donors, even the same messaging. What the journalists uncovered looked less like a movement and more like a corporate shell game. Internal memos leaked. Documents showed coordinated timing, synchronized spending, shared strategies, all things that legally shouldn't happen between independent groups. Under U.S. tax law, these organizations are forbidden to coordinate with campaigns. But when the same people are running multiple outfits, timing their ads, and pooling resources, it's not independence, it's manipulation. It's political money laundering with a moral mask. And the volunteers? Many weren't volunteers at all. Reports surfaced suggesting that over 1,000 were paid operatives funded through the same network, sent door to door to create the illusion of genuine public enthusiasm. Imagine paying people to fake passion, to simulate democracy. It's not activism. It's performance art on a national scale. And here's the part that enraged even lifelong Democrats. Buried deep in those financial disclosures were government grants, totaling somewhere around $50 million. Yes, taxpayer money helping build the very machine that's now trying to influence elections. Public funds used to fuel private political power. The same playbook once seen in foreign regimes, now reappearing in New York City. When those revelations hit the press, the illusion shattered. The image of an authentic grassroots uprising dissolved overnight, replaced by the outline of a carefully engineered political operation. The slogan spoke of socialism, but the system behind it looked corporate, even corrupt. And that revelation didn't just rock New York, it terrified Washington. Because Schumer and Jeffries understood something simple yet deadly. Once the public realizes they've been deceived, trust evaporates, and no amount of spin can bring it back. The story went national. What started as an inside baseball investigation turned into front-page scandal. Voters who'd once cheered Mamdani started asking hard questions. Moderates, silenced for months, began to speak up. And suddenly, people on both sides of the aisle saw a pattern. A manipulation of democracy itself, hidden beneath slogans of the people. Because if it could happen in New York, under the brightest spotlight in America, where else was it happening? How many grassroots movements were actually just money machines in disguise? That question rippled across the country like a tremor. And right then, when chaos reached its peak, Trump made his move. Not with a rally, not with an outburst, just a single, perfectly timed statement. Say what you will about him, Trump understands timing like a chess grandmaster. While the press obsessed over scandals and spreadsheets, he watched and waited. Then, when the moment was ripe, he acted. On Truth Social, Trump posted a single message, simple words, devastating impact. If Zoran Mamdani wins, federal funding for New York will be reduced to the legal minimum. No extras, no favors, no discretionary grants. Harsh? Maybe. But behind that statement was a message sharper than any insult. Actions have consequences. Trump wasn't just threatening, he was reframing accountability. He was telling the nation, if you choose leaders funded by questionable networks, don't expect federal sympathy. It was discipline disguised as defiance, a warning to every blue city experimenting with radicalism. But then came the twist no one expected. Everyone thought Trump would back Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate. That's the obvious move, right? But Trump went the other way. He nodded toward Andrew Cuomo. Yes, that Cuomo, the disgraced former governor. Why? Because sometimes victory isn't about winning yourself. It's about dividing your opponent so they destroy each other. By elevating Cuomo, Trump gave moderates an escape hatch. Suddenly, Democrats who couldn't stomach Mamdani had a way out.